Good morning, folks. Welcome to the Dr. Kent Show. I think this might be the last day that I can't upload on Awakening Israel. And today we have letter E. E for evermore. My sin is ever before me. I'm an old man at this point. There's no doubt about that. And I remember when I was young, about to turn 21, I was sitting in the cafeteria, the lunchroom, the area where we ate in the pensione, in Florence, Italy, and Jerry, the priest, the Jesuit priest, was there, and I probably was complaining about something. I'm just taking a guess. And Jerry and I interacted occasionally. Not much. I guess as a Protestant, I was an oddball in a Catholic institution. And I had no idea what the Jesuits were about at that time. I was learning. I knew that the university I went to had more undergraduate requirements than any other school in the nation, so I had to take courses that I normally wouldn't have taken. I wish I had studied harder and paid more attention. I wish I hadn't partied as much, to be honest with you. And I remember I was complaining, and Jerry was, and of course, back then we had sayings like, it was the tail end of the hippie era, don't trust anyone over 30. I think we probably started out with 25 and had to move it to 30 when we got a little older, but so don't trust anybody over 30 was the saying. The screwed up thing about the hippie era was that it was all engineered by the CIA. The drugs, the culture, everything was packaged and sold by your Central Intelligence Agency. How do you feel about that? I don't feel too good about it. Those people have been running us for a long time. So we really haven't had freedom to develop ourselves, freedom to develop our consciences, freedom to think. They control everything, and you're going to say the guy's paranoid. Well, look, they control the language to a large extent. They control the terms. Most important thing is they control the assumptions of an argument. And when you control the assumptions, you actually tailor it for the results you want to get. So people will think they are free to think, but in reality they're not. They're set on a path that only leads them to conclude what your Central Intelligence Agency wants you to conclude, what your government wants to think. So all of that stuff that you're thinking about, all those building blocks for your ideas are all controlled. To a large extent, it occurs in the language. Alexander Luria was a great neuropsychologist in Russia. He really made major contributions, and he made some major contributions when it came to brain functions and brain injuries, because he dealt with a lot of head injuries from the war. He came up with, it's been so long since I've thought about this, much less talked about this. He came up with some incredible insights into the development of cognition, development of thinking, and the development of speech. And one of the things he came up with is that we externalize, we vocalize everything that we think when we're learning how to speak. We're learning how to talk. We're learning language skills. We're a couple of years of age. We talk it out loud. Drives mothers nuts. You know, we verbalize every little thing. And, of course, it kind of gets on mother's nerves because it's like, my God, just shut up. Just be quiet. Shut up, you know. Drives them kind of nuts. It irritates them. And I remember irritating my mother. I was the first. So I got the brunt while they experimented and learned how to be parents with me. They didn't do too good. Maybe you'll disagree with me, but I imagine my detractors out there would love to jump on that bandwagon. Alexander Luria said that we externalize everything, we speak it, and then gradually we don't externalize it, we internalize it, and we think it. Now, I had a great psychologist for the chairman of my dissertation. Um, he had published a lot of books. He had made a lot of money. And I got to know him a little bit. And basically what I found out is that your muscles will work in a certain sense and get integrated with your brain. Everything gets wired up. So this idea that the body, mind, the body, soul split, this duality is a false duality. It's all integrated. They can actually take cameras and actually take EMG measuring devices for the well, I should know the names of those terms since I did my research in that. Electromyograph, I believe. They can measure all that. And they've actually got it to the point now where they can tell what you're thinking. They've had that for quite a while. You can tell quite a bit about what's being active in a person's brain by putting those little sensors on them. And I had to do that for my my research. That was such a long time ago. And so they can probably take a camera today and watch you and know what you're thinking. They can read your friggin' mind. And it's not magic. It's only magic because they withhold the technology from you so that you don't understand the capability they have. And by the way, these glass windows that are in my house, in your house, they're all recording devices. Fluid dynamics. They end up recording all the vibrations, all of the speech that's inside. The glass picks it up. It's not a solid, it's a fluid. Not the water that's in it. I'm talking about that rock solid glass right there. That's still fluid, in case you're wondering. But they've got cameras, and they can take pictures of your glass window, and they can decode or play back, it's probably more accurate, all the speeches that have occurred inside that room. The technology has been around since approximately when I went to graduate school, 1990. We know because our Army was using the weapons upon us back then. Our Army was taking pictures of the windows in the houses, so they were surveying us back then. Who knows when the technology was developed and when they first started doing it. But in Alaska, they tend to bring technology here and experiment on us first. They hone their devices, their craft, their skills on us because we tend to be a bit of a more remote population. They won't be observed as readily, and they can get by with more. They can get away with more. They wouldn't get away with it so easily in places like LA where there are more people. There are more people that are up on technology and all that. Somebody would probably ferret it out and figure things out earlier. But we had a gentleman up there who was in civilian clothes, and he said he had the best job in the world. He was an Army soldier at Fort Richardson, and he drove all day long in the valley with a gun, a device to measure and to take pictures. And the gun told him two things. This is back then. You know, we're talking 30 years ago. It would tell him how much money was in the house. How much cash was in the house? And then it would take a picture of the window, and they would take that back and decode that and know what the conversations were. Yeah. Then on top of that, what was I getting to? Oh, yes. About the same time, they developed another weapons system. That's what I call them because they're using them against us. They don't tell you about it. Silent weapons for silent wars. They developed another device for detecting guns. And they were putting it on the bottoms of the helicopters, this tube, some sort of a measuring, some sort of a device. And they would fly around in their helicopters, black helicopters in Alaska, at night, daytime. These were silent runners, too. These were really advanced helicopters. And they would be able to pinpoint with extreme accuracy where your guns were. As a matter of fact, the state troopers in Alaska were using these devices and testing them for who knows who at that point. And one of the troopers would be stopping an individual and he'd say, my device, whatever that tool was called, is showing that there's a gun in the car. Oh, really? His buddy, another Alaska state trooper, says, you just stay right there. I'll be right there in so many minutes. I'll pass by and I'll tell you exactly where it is. So those two devices were able to triangulate, to communicate with each other, and they could pinpoint exactly where in the car the gun was. Oh, and in case you're wondering, remember when they made lead paint illegal? No, you don't remember. Why would they make a paint that lasts longer illegal? Well, they could come up with a wonderful excuse of protecting the children. Imagine that. But what if lead paint actually sealed up really good and there was no danger to the children? Well, what would be their motivation then? I mean, you have a paint that lasts 20 years or 30 years, and you're going to make people go to this latex crap that doesn't last very long. So they're going to have to spend more money on paint, more money on labor. Boy, talk about wasting people's substance. About the same time they made that illegal, we had those satellites going over with their cameras. They couldn't penetrate the lead paint. It had to be done away with so they could spy on us. So, you want your privacy? Put some lead back in your paint. No, this government is evil as can be. It's one of the demons that came out of the devil's mouth. One of the three demons. Government being the most evil of the three. And your second is religion. And your third, education. By those three beasts, three demons, they control all of your mentation, all of your thinking. And by the language that's imposed, and the duality in the language, the babble of the language, they pull a bunch of frauds on us as well. They really screw us over badly. So my sin is ever before me, and that's quite true. I remember the bullshit I pulled, and I regret it. I mean, even the smallest things. Didn't pay a guy for the toner cartridge a long time ago in San Diego. So I basically stole $50 from him back then. I still remember that. I still get upset with myself over that one. Oh, and then the guy, the sensei, still owe him $15 for a lab fee from a long time ago, and I screwed up on that. I don't know what it was. I guess it was the hippie part of me that said, I'm not paying for something. I don't know, but I should have honored his student's request. It was a proper request. I didn't like the guy, for one thing. He was a brown belt and lording it over us, but I just wish that I had paid the $15, stayed with it. I was actually pretty good at it. Didn't realize how good I was till I ended up using it without even thinking about it. And I only used it to block. I wasn't using it to hit and strike. I was just using it to protect myself. I was even amazed. But I'm an old man now, and I sure don't want to have that kind of pressure on my bones. I got a little bit of Bible to read from you. Yeah, I know, this isn't Awakening Israel. This isn't the Bible channel, but Psalms. Psalms is the middle of this Bible, this standard Bible. It's the longest book in the Bible, and the longest chapter in the whole Bible with the most verses is dead set in the middle of the Bible. However, we got a few books missing from this. According to Pastor Paul, it should be 100 books. Some people say 150 books. How many books are in this one? 66. Gee, where have I heard that number before? Talk about hypocrites, numerology, and all that stuff. And if you add the 14 books from the Apocrypha to it, you get 80. And they took a lot of books out of this thing because they didn't want you to know the truth. They were trying to hide their tracks. The tracks were too well documented. The book of Jasher really should be in here. It should be in here. And then you got 5 books of Enoch. Where the heck are they? They should be in here as well. Talk about esoteric books and symbolism. Okay. I'm going to read through this. You're going to suffer through it. What Jesuit Jerry told me as we're sitting there, and by the way, he socked the wine down and he smoked his cigarettes, and he had a pretty good life. He ate well, drank well, was well supported. Jesuits were required to have 2 doctorates. Not 1, but 2. Every one of those guys is super brainy, super educated. I'm glad I got to hang out with them. I'm glad I got educated. I have one friend I was a roommate with. He became a Jesuit. After he decided to go down that route, he got kind of creepy and weird, and I haven't been in touch with him. I'd love to be in touch with him now. He's just a little bit older than I. He's probably still alive. I want to know if he stuck with it and what he found out. But I don't like the Jesuits very much because of their origins. You see, the first Jesuit was a Marrano Jewish dude named Lopez, who changed his name to Ignatius Loyola. Now, I like the sound of that name. That sounds wonderful. Ignatius Loyola came up with the technique for indoctrinating these fellows, brainwashing them. They were subjected to silence and other sorts of deprivation, and then they took some pretty weird blood oaths. And in case you're wondering, this is the military arm of the Catholic Church. But these boys were so bad, the Pope banned them at one time. And then they got back in there in good graces. And they never were supposed to cross over. It's like what happened in our country. We ignored the separation of powers, and the attorneys went across all of these positions and screwed us up all the way across. You know, we had the separation of powers for a reason. And the Jesuits, a Jesuit was never supposed to be able to become a pope. That was one of their big rules. Why was that? It's because the Jesuit general is actually the Pope's boss. He's the Black Pope. Every time they install a new Jesuit general, they fire off those cannons, just like in the overture of 1812 where the cannons go off, you know, and that wonderful sound comes blaring up. They fire off cannons because it's an act of war. They're waging war against the rest of us on the planet. And they are the centers of intelligence. And the most powerful man on the face of the earth is the white Pope's boss, the Black Pope, across the way. He keeps low profile. He's not even in Vatican City. His office is over there. What did they say at the time I was in school over there back in the 70s? Jesuit general told his guests, from this office I control. It was a little office, very unassuming. From my office, from this office I control all the secret societies of the world. Number 1 guy next to Satan. I haven't thought about this or talked about this in a long time. But what Jerry told me as I was sitting there at lunchtime, and he always had his cigarette afterwards, he got me started smoking. What were those cigarettes that were so good, the British ones? 25 in a pack, and they weren't cured up with the sugar and other poisons that we put in American cigarettes. In America, we have more poisons in our products than they allow in other countries. Dunhill cigarettes, which were really much better than the damn Marlboros, that were cured with sugar, which resulted in anhydride, which was a poison and an addictive. It made the cigarette 8 times more addictive than regular tobacco. It kept the damn thing from going out if you left it in the ashtray, though. A Dunhill will not burn itself all the way through. If you don't smoke on that son of a bitch, it will go out. So he got me started smoking Dunhills. I didn't start smoking until I was behind the Iron Curtain on Christmas break. I quit many times. This was the last time I started. I think it was time number 6. Oh my God, I quit so many times. Anyway, this old guy in the Iron Curtain offered me a cigarette. For some reason, I accepted it. I mean, he was a really old guy, and it was a gesture of goodwill. And I'm all for goodwill. So I picked up the nasty habit again. Anyway, Jerry assured me that life got better as one gets older. And Jerry told me that his 30s were better than his 20s. I think he was in his 40s. Well, he seemed pretty old to me. He could have been in his 50s. But Jerry says, it gets better with age. And he was looking forward to his 50s or 60s and 70s. And the thing is that I was really glad for that conversation with Jerry. Jerry had a wry sense of humor. I had super long hair, and everybody would assume that I was that I was like, well, a hippie. I was at the tail end. My hair was down below my belt. It was long. Women were jealous. It was 26 and a half inches long at its longest. And I would hear the women in Italy walking behind me, and they didn't know that I knew Italian, didn't know it very well, couldn't utter it very well, and they would always say, "Che belli capelli" behind me, and, you know, as if they knew that I didn't know what the hell they were saying, but beautiful hair. And I had a beard back then. I had to grow that because I didn't like the treatment I got otherwise, because the hair was so long and so beautiful. Such a full head of hair. I mean, it was, wish I had some pictures from back then. Then again, I'm glad I don't. I'd be kind of embarrassed by it. But anyway, I don't have a lot of pictures of myself. I wish I'd have gotten a few more when I looked good, looked completely different when I was younger. Yeah, not going to grow no hair out anymore. Jerry was right. Each decade, life gets better. My awareness picks up. My self-awareness picks up. Matter of fact, last year I got handed, wasn't quite my life on a platter, wasn't quite my ass on a platter, but I got handed my shit on a platter. Yeah, I'm a trained psychologist, right? I'm supposed to know stuff. I'm supposed to be on top of my game. I'm supposed to understand everything. Everybody, everyone. I'm supposed to be able to read minds. Didn't you know that? No. But I'm supposed to know the literature, and I'm supposed to know the philosophy undergirding my discipline. Anyway, I don't call myself a psychologist very much because it's a protected term. And even though we have free speech in this country, supposedly, all of the states have got laws. You can't call yourself a psychologist unless you're licensed by the board. Talk about being restricted. So I'm not allowed to call myself a psychologist or hold myself out as a psychologist because I don't have an active license anywhere. And the boards are all staffed up by these libtards, liberal turds. They're really the shits, man. I mean, they have hurt this country so much, it's not funny. And they continue to destroy the country. That is why I tell you to stay away from me and my kind. Don't get me wrong. I think I'm a pretty good guy, and I think I have a better understanding. But the biggest problem you have is that your average psychologist is a super liberal and will not respect your values as a bunch of freaking hypocrites. We're supposed to learn the ways of the people. We're supposed to help them out in their value systems and respect their value systems, but they don't want to respect conservative value systems. They do not want to coexist. They're definitely the devil's children, spiritually. Devil's got real DNA children too, by the way. So life does get better as one gets older, but I thought I understood my family, and then a distant relative, feeling sorry for me, told me more about my family than I had realized. And I was shocked because my family was so small that my assumption and my attitude was my family's really small. It's nothing like that, because I'd hear about these other families and think, well, my family's nothing like that. We're too small to be able to be like that. Oh my God, did she set me straight? We're a little bit worse than the others, actually, in many ways. It's pretty bad. I have been very naive, extremely naive. My mother said my middle initial should be G. And what did G stand for? Gullible. Well, my mother was too busy manipulating and telling white lies and running my ass around. And it was a problem for me. Mom was a problem for me in particular. I was the target of her wrath. Everybody else was happy as long as I was there, because I was the lightning rod. She got to use it, take it all out on me, and nobody backed me, nobody protected me, not even my dad. And they all picked up some bad habits, thinking it was okay to do that, and I have suffered from that. Didn't realize that I had trusted the wrong people for too long, and that they were backbiting me and undermining me. Yeah. I wish in many ways that my uncle had reared me. I would have gone to better schools. I always wanted to go to better schools. Schools bored the hell out of me. They held me back. Man, I would have loved to have gone to Phillips Exeter Academy, rubbed elbows with those bigwigs. But I took the humble path I took. And in many ways, I'm grateful for that, because I would not want to have rubbed elbows with the wicked of society. There was a problem in early psychology, and Freud and Jung got into some debates together. And the real problem was that, well, they're both Jewish gentlemen. That wasn't a problem. Jung got into the dark side, real dark side. And if you really want to understand demons, I think you're going to have to go study Jung. If you want to understand all that stuff, he's the one that got in there. He went into the dark area. And what I can tell you about psychologists is that we have to have a handle on ourselves. Because if we don't, we tend to visit our foibles, our problems, on our clients. That's what most psychologists do without realizing it. So most psychologists will give you a diagnosis. It is a stress reaction in the psychologist that the psychologist feels upon your presentation. So whose problem is it? Who's getting diagnosed here? Capiche? Do you understand me? And if you're a budding psychologist, do you realize that most of the people in the field are a bunch of liberal jackasses that do a lot of damage and harm a lot of people, and they're going to harm you? If you don't believe what they say, if you are a member of the party, the Communist Party, whatever you want to call it, the Devil's Party, if you are not one of them, they will run you out. They will discriminate against you. There are many brilliant men out there who can't get doctorates because they would not be accepted. That's the way it is. It's very corrupted, very corruptible. It's just pretty bad at this point. So this young, compared to me, she's young. And her husband told me she's a very smart woman. He mentioned that many times. Man, was she smart. And she had worked through her stuff. And did she have some stuff to work through? And it was because of that that she could see all of mine and my family. And she basically had some mercy and explained it to me. Suggested I see her therapist for therapy, but she's very expensive. But I don't have money for it. I don't have time. Although stuff has been bothering me quite a bit in the last few months. So it might be worth looking into. If I have the money, I just might do that. If I can get my inheritance, recover the inheritance, and if I got a decent settlement on that last auto accident that I got screwed on badly, then I probably would be able to entertain that idea. It would be nice to go into boot camp again and get some growth, even at 70. Wow. When I was studying to become a psychologist, I had to read about therapy. And the books that I read were just, my last supervisor, Dr. Lewis Masser, was wonderful. He gave me the right stuff to read, and I look back at it now, and I'm just thinking, my God, I was so lucky to stumble upon him and to end up with him. Of course, I'll never forget when he told me he didn't want me. He didn't want to inherit me. He didn't appreciate it much at all. And I sat there swallowing hard, thinking, my God, I'm never going to be a psychologist. I'm never going to get licensed. This guy doesn't like me. And I was over in an office quite a ways from him. And, I was at the bottom of the rung. I was the intern. Heck, if I didn't have the car I had, I would have qualified for food stamps. Anyway, when one of the master's level therapists, and they all outranked me, they all had more experience, and they got to play with me, to toy with me, and they had some fun. And as Lewis told me, he says, it's going to be the best time of your life. You're going to really miss this. Man, he was right about that. It was kind of playful and carefree, except they required me to stick around longer and cook my ass much more because I needed it. My background was such that I needed to be shaped much more. So it took me twice as long. So I ended up under supervision for a hell of a lot longer than the average psychologist today. And it was to my benefit, although I lived with a mattress on the floor and a cardboard box for a nightstand for my alarm clock, and in one bedroom, 400 square foot apartment in Tupelo, Mississippi. I learned how to tolerate rough circumstances. Life was so much simpler then. So the average psychologist is diagnosing a person based upon his or her level of stress from the presentation. They're also using a checklist. Basically what they're doing is they're coming up with a diagnosis for you, a label for you. They're conceptualizing this. And then they cast you in these cement overshoes, if you will. And you're not allowed to change because that's the way they see you. They are smarter than you are. They are brighter than you are. They know more than you know. They know better than you. And that's just the way it is. They practice a negative projective process. So I'm explaining things to you that are pretty important, and the average budding psychologist out there needs to know this. That is a negative projective process, and you're doing more harm than you're doing good. That's the way the profession is. And as far as values, they go out the door, out the window, over the cliff with the rest of the lemmings. And behavior sinks to the lowest common denominator. That's my take on life. And we've gotten worse as I've gotten older. I'd like to be able to think I've gotten better, but I've gone down with the rest of this culture. I've become more aware of it, a little bit freer of it as I age up. Just wish I didn't have the pains I had, and I wish I had some of the capacities I had before. A little bit more resilience would be nice. I'd love to have my hair color back, my hair back. Oh well, what can I say? It's not going to happen. That's okay. If I'd have known what I know now, I could have preserved myself better. Copper deficiency causing the gray hair. There's a few minerals that are a problem. They actually run this place, this plantation, to shorten our lives. If you read in the Bible in Genesis towards the end, it will tell you that a man's lifespan shall only be 120 years. I don't know anybody living that long. You know, where's the rest of my life at? Where's the rest of it going? Well, it's the society we're living in. These clothes that they make for us and give to us, they're required to do all kinds of things in the name of safety. The fire retardants, might they be causing cancers? Might they be doing harm to your body? The additives in the water and the food. And of course, the United States of America, in Europe, for more than 2 decades, it's been illegal to fluoridate the water. Why? Because they know it's harmful. Not only does it cause cancer, it causes heart disease. And it causes mental retardation. It drops full-scale IQ on an average of 11 full-scale IQ points. The people in the Orient, who are more disciplined than we are in North America, studied the stuff and replicated the studies and came up with the data. They did the psychological testing, they repeated the doggone tests, and they found out when you fluoridate the water, you dumb their asses down. And believe me, America has been dumbed down. Could you imagine what your life would be like if you operated with a little bit more than 10 more full-scale IQ points, a little bit sharper, a little bit quicker, a better memory, better reflexes, better calculations, better mathematics ability, better all the way around, better able to register life, to perceive your world. Yes, you're being poisoned and you're being deprived. It's still damn near mandatory to fluoridate the water, and they fight it everywhere. They fight it because they want to keep you down. They have targeted Americans for a reason. You're the Great White Hope? You're the last hope. Great White Hope, I think that was the name for our Navy because all the ships were painted white at one time. Made them real targets too, sadly, but they changed that later on. Do the right thing so that when you get to my age, you won't find the garbage keeps coming up. You won't find those simple little things you did wrong back then. You're going to pay more of a price for those in the future than what you think. I wish I didn't think about those things as much, but I do. Okay. Light overhead. Hold on. There we go. I'm going to read to you 2 chapters from the book of Psalms, and that is because I opened up and my eye caught the last 2 verses of Psalms 2. But I'm going to read it all to lead up to that. And I'm not going beyond that because the stuff that goes beyond that is the family crap that happened when David fled from Absalom, his son, who was hunting him down. You really want to study David and his family and the bullshit he pulled and the stuff he got away with, because he didn't get away with it. And the karma is rather instant. And that is part of the Bible teachings, by the way. It was pulled out by Emperor Constantine. He was the great-grandson of Herod the Great, by the way. It was an Edomian. So he was from Mount Seir, a descendant of Esau, who took wives from the people of the land and polluted his bloodline, actually quite literally. So, verse 11, we'll start with the last 2 verses. Those stand out. I'm going to start with verse 12 since I read that one first. Kiss the Son. S on Son is capitalized. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and you perish the way. The word from, you perish from the way. The way is important. Yahshua refers to himself as the way later on. And the word from, the preposition, is not in the original languages. So it was put in here for clarification, and it's in italics. That's how you know. So kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and you perish from the way. When his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. Is that not seeing your Jesus, my Yahshua the Messiah, your Jesus the Christ in the future? I think it is. There's some amazing mysteries in Psalms when David speaks about things. We'll start with the beginning of this. Psalms 1:1. Blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of Yahweh, and in his law does he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that brings forth his fruit in his season. His leaf shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For Yahweh knows the ways of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. Psalms 2, chapter 2. Why do the heathen rage, and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against Yahweh and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands apart and cast their cords from us. He that sits in the heavens shall laugh, the Lord shall have them in derision. Then shall he speak to them in his wrath, and trouble them in his great displeasure. Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. Yahweh has said to me, you are my son. This day have I begotten you. As of me, and I ask of me, and I shall give you the heathen for your inheritance, and the utmost parts of the earth for your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron. You shall dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Be wise now, therefore, O you kings. Be instructed, you judges of the earth. Serve Yahweh with fear, and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and you perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. There's a lot embedded in this passage. The S in the word Son is capitalized. We talk about, let's see. These things cross my mind in here that are very important. And of course, delight in the law of Yahweh, and in his law does he meditate it day and night. The more that you get the ordinances, the rules, the regulations, the 10 Commandments into your consciousness, the better your life is going to be, the better you're going to be able to act on the good and do the best thing possible. So that's why you want to meditate, so that you will have good things and have good outcome. In this country, are things going good? Yes or no? It's not going good. Why? Because it's ungodly. The ungodly shall perish. And that's what the evil ones want to do with you. That's why they're busy poisoning you. Water fluoridation, cancer-causing chemicals in your clothing and in other building materials and in fabrics. so they don't burn as fast, but they cause cancer for you and stuff. There's all kinds of little traps they put in. They put in heavy metals, little bits of trace metals in your food. Yeah, they do that. They put in all kinds of chemicals. There's between 100,000 and 300,000 new chemical compounds that have never been tested, that are at use at large in this country. And the only thing is they'll test them after they've found there's some damage, like thalidomide. They were giving that to women, causing horrible, horrible birth defects. These kids came out really, really deformed, defective, really bad. And they kept the thalidomide going until the public demanded, until it was, oh, the doctors, they're no good. They do what they're told by the drug companies. The drug companies dictate to them what they're going to practice. And the drug companies do not have your best interests at heart. And every one of these pharmaceutical companies, where are their corporate headquarters at? Answer me that. Do your own research. They're all in one damn city. I hope it gets nuked. Well, probably shouldn't be saying that. I'm pretty angry. When you realize what they've done, they've taken poisons and made those into medicines for us. And don't get me wrong, it's treatment. I avail myself of it. I have to. I stroked in 2006 twice. I take a lot of blood pressure medicine now, and it's a juggling act. It's getting kind of tough. So, yeah, I abide by what my doctor says to do, but I'm real careful on it, and I work pretty closely with those folks, and they get things wrong all the time. All the time. We caught some errors this last week. No wonder my blood pressure was ragged. They thought I was on a different medicine. Just one little bit of difference. In other versions of the Bible, it starts off, "Blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the wicked." So it's not just ungodly, but wicked. I like the strength of the wicked language a little bit better. But this works. This works well. Zion is capitalized. Zion used to mean something really good. The hill, the holy hill of Zion. Hills, mountains are governments. And Zion is the Lord's. Of course, Zionism has come to mean something not so positive today. Do your own research. Look up what the Zionist movement's about. Look up their sordid history. Not a good thing. So they're against Yahweh and against his anointed. And what does Yahshua mean? What does Jesus' real name mean? Yahshua. It has saving in its name. The name Jesus doesn't have saving in it at all. It was put forward when the letter J was introduced into the English language. The same time the Jesuits were founded. And what is their mission? To put forward the name of Jesus. Is that his name? No. It's not his name. His name is Yahshua, which means he who saves the anointed. The first syllable, Yah, the same as the first syllable of Yahweh. Yah. And in case you're wondering, in Psalms, in my NIV study Bible, they screwed up and put in Y-A-H, all capital letters. And I'm looking at that going, where the heck did that come from? What's that mean? I circled that in red ink. I dog-eared that page in half because I want to know what it was. They slipped up and put the original nickname of Yahweh in that version of the Bible. Wonderful little godsend. It set me off on a path, so I wanted to find out, what does this mean? It means that Ptolemy II in 275 BC took out the name Yahweh from the Bible when he was translating the Hebrew Bible into Greek to render the Septuagint. Why did he put it into Greek? Because most of the Israelites were speaking Greek by then. They had become Hellenized. They were, not only that, they weren't even in Israel. They were out of Israel. They had broken loose into Egypt, Europe rather, and around the world into uninhabited places. This break them with a rod of iron, that comes up in the book of Revelations, and dash them to pieces like a potter's vessel. For some reason, Adolf Hitler comes to mind with that stuff. iron cross. And he wasn't as bad as what they depicted him to be. He certainly wasn't rabid like they had him portrayed as. But I do think that he was a man that had some Rothschild lineage in him, was controlled by the bankers to a large extent. He decided to break loose of his controllers. He was a pretty smart dude. They loved him over there. They called him the Führer, the Father. The Bible says you don't call anybody else Father, but your Father in heaven. You don't call your Catholic priest Father. That's not biblical. Catholics do it anyway. Okay, fine. So, they sped up the videos that I watched as a little boy to make that man look rabid, make it look like looked like a rabid dog, made him look like a madman. And if you listen to his voice in its normal recording, it was actually mellifluous. It actually sounded good. It sounded wonderful. And the German language is not a pretty language by any means. Dutch is worse. They say it causes throat cancer because a lot of it's in the throat for the pronunciations. It's hard on the throat. It's a harder language and more guttural than German is. But German, I don't think it's a very pretty language. And the Germans don't have poetry, for one. They don't have synonyms, homonyms. They don't have a lot of that stuff that we have in the English language. And Germans tend to like English because of the poetry, of which they're deprived. Well, folks, if you hung out with me this long, I appreciate it quite a bit. This is show letter E for My Sin Is Ever Before Me. What is sin? Sin is an archer's term. It came from archery, and it means simply missing the mark. You aim at the target, but you don't hit it. You miss the mark. That was a sin. So from that simple little colloquialism, that original saying, we ended up making it even worse than what it was. So you miss the target, you shoot again. One of the teachers, who I have some respect for, said that you do not suffer the consequences, you just don't get the blessing. Now that's a philosophy that I do not hold to. I don't agree with him on that. It's my belief that if you commit the sin, yes, you don't get the blessing, but on top of that, you get some bad stuff pretty often too. So, and I think it's instant karma, instant retribution, which was part of the original way, part of the old faith. Then Constantine took it out, and now we say, well, there's no karma, nothing happens. Well, it happens during this life. A lot of this stuff gets worked out and played out. You may think your life is random, but from my study of music and music theory, the most random sounding music is the most highly organized. Your life is much more highly organized than you realize. And when you turn to Yahweh, when you read his book, the Bible, and you access the mind of God, you are reprogramming yourself. You're programming yourself, and you're going to have good things happen. You read the Bible, watch it unfold. Watch life unfold differently for you. Watch for major improvements. You want your republic back. You want your country back. You want to be free people again. You want to get rid of these evil people in D.C., these evil corporate governments at the state levels. You want to do away with this outrageous criminal justice system that commits crimes in itself the way it's administered every day. Then you go to the law of Yahweh rather than the law of man. And you return to the Constitution, to the common law, which is in line with the law of Yahweh as compared to this corporate law, these statutory laws, which have they've got criminals because they invent them and create them. There's no victims. So why shouldn't you be free to do those things? Victimless crimes? They've really got us screwed up. In order to get your country back, you got to fight them. But you have to fight them wisely and smartly. How do you fight them? Well, you listen to their wisdom. You take the advice of Barack Insane Obama. President Obama uttered some great wisdom. Some of his adages were incredible, like don't underestimate Joe's ability to screw things up. That's not exactly what he said, but you know the thing. You know the word he really used was the F-bomb. But he also said, in the middle of the country in particular, they cling to their guns and their Bibles. So folks, your biggest weapon, your biggest protection is right here. You go to the link below. There's 5 different formats to buy. Get one of them. Support my channel by getting one of those. I do not monetize my channels at this point. I don't plan on doing that. I was hoping that I could avoid some scrutiny and have a little bit more free speech rights and be able to develop thoughts fully on this platform so that we could grow together. And if you think I'm not growing, you're nuts. I mean, I teach this stuff. I get to master it because of that. I'm looking forward to it. I used to teach music. That really was wonderful to do. I need you to become a Bible reader every day. The founders of our nation, this was their primary reader, their primer. It was the Bible. They were all schooled in it. And you haven't been. I wasn't. I was way over age 50 by the time I sat down and read it. It's one of my big regrets. That, not showing enough deference and respect to my father. If I'd have read this book when I was a young man, I think I could have avoided a lot of problems. But I also look at my life and realize that it was a troubled life. It was severely problematic, so I'd be able to come through it and make good. That was my responsibility. It wasn't my blame. The blame is elsewhere. But still, it was my responsibility to straighten my ass up and make something good of my life. That's the case for you as well. So you're handed this platter of excrement, this platter of dung, this platter of shit. And you aren't to blame for it. You're not to blame for it. But you are responsible. It is your job to take this pile of shit and turn it into nutritious stuff for you and make good of the shit you've been handed. When you make good of the mess you've been given, you're going to grow and you're no longer going to be a victim. You're going to be victorious. So, you may not be to blame. It may have been handed to you by somebody else, by the government, by organized religion, by the public indoctrination system, brainwashing system, by your own family. Your parents didn't have it maybe. They had limitations. They had to work within their limitations. So it's not really their fault. They got what they could from their parents. So do you understand what I'm pleading with you to do? I'm pleading with you to take what you have right now and make the best of it you can. Make the best of yourself you can. It's your responsibility. Nobody else's responsibility. It's certainly not your therapist's responsibility. As I told people when they did things and changed, hey man, whatever you did it. I didn't do it. I just got to watch. I got to witness it. And I'm glad I got to see it. You know, you did it. You did the work. That happened a lot in inmates in the penitentiary. They come back changed. They got honest feedback. They never had it in their lives quite often. They didn't realize how everybody else knew their stuff and could see right through them. And then they come back to me and they correct themselves. So do not wear the cement overshoes that a psychologist or a psychiatrist, which is even worse, or a master's level therapist will use upon you. Don't accept it. Don't Don't listen to them when they tell you that you cannot change and that this personality disorder is lifelong. They're full of crap. We all grow, we all change with each decade, and it can get better, or your flaws could intensify and get worse. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. All right, folks, our hour is up. Yahweh bless you. May you bless Yahweh. May Yahweh bless our republic. May Yahweh fight for us again. Turn to Yahweh. Let him carry the weight. He loves fighting for us. He loved it in the old days. And man, the stuff he says he's going to do in the future in this book, oh boy, I'd love to live to see some of that stuff. Whew. When he returns to fight, wow. Yahweh bless. Over and out.